by the end of the next week, we'll talk about it. So I only have you guys 3 days this week, right? And then I don't see you for 2 weeks after that, okay? Because of DC and all that stuff. So my goal, just so you know, is we're going to cover this learning target today, this learning target tomorrow, and very rarely do I do this, but I have to do this. Check for understanding is the very next day. So we're gonna, but it'll be fine. I wouldn't do it if I didn't think that you needed a whole weekend to study for, whatever. You will be fine, I promise you. Okay. So we're only going to get 1 and 2 done, and then we're going to have to pick up on 3 after Easter, which is not really ideal because you really need 1 and 2 to do all these. We'll probably start with the review when we get back. But so just keep in mind what we have this week. It's boom, boom, boom. 1, 2, 3. Learning target, quiz. Okay. So really, just do your best to focus on this. So let's just start with this. A to the third, back about when you learned about what exponents were in whatever grade, I don't know, 4th grade, and they talked about what that meant, they probably had you write it out standard form, which means without exponents, right? And you were taught that a to the third really meant a times a times a. Okay? Because they're variables, you don't have to put the dots in between for multiplication. You don't have to put a time symbol. That's really just a to the third, right? So if I were to ask you to then write out what a to the second is, you would write an a times an a, right? Okay? So then if I ask you to take a to the third and multiply it times a to the second, the most common misconception would be, oh, she's asking me to multiply, so the answer is probably a to the 6th. And it's not. How many a's are you looking at over here? And then... so I have 3 here and only 2 here. I don't see 6 A's. I see 5. So this is going to actually be a to the 5th power. So a to the third times a to the second is really a to the 5th. Even though it says multiply, yeah. So it said multiply, but I added the exponents. It seems kind of confusing, but we'll do a couple more and you'll kind of see where the multiplying part comes in. Okay? So if I have x to the 5th times x to the 7th, I'm not going to write them all out, but if I did, I'd have 5 x's here, 7 more x's here. That answer would be what? Right? Like, so at this point, don't think anything more other than, oh, so all I do is add the exponents? Yep, that's all you do. Okay? There's going to be more to it than that. Okay? So what if I had a to the third times a b to the 7th, though? Right. Exactly. You can't do that. So what? Did you have a question on something up here? Okay. Right. So he knew right away. He's like, well, you can't do that. Because if I were to say, okay, here I have 3 A's and here I have 7 B's, do I have 12 of anything? Do I have 12 A's? No, I have 3. Do I have 12 B's? No, I have 7. Do I have 12 of any single variable? No. So you cannot add them here. And again, I'm going to say this a lot. Don't overthink it. Then your answer is just a to the third, b to the 7th. That's all your answer is. You can have them pushed together like that. It's just that, okay? And somebody kind of said, what in the past does this remind you of? Last year, maybe when you learned it with Mr. Meeks or in 6th grade with Mr. Seville or Miss McClendon, she told you, because I know you learned it in 6th grade because my daughter's learning it right now with her. Like if you had a 4A and a 7A, they taught you that you can go ahead and add those 4 and that 7 because you have 4 apples and 7 more apples means you have 11 apples, right? Right? But if you had 4 apples and 7 bananas, you didn't have 11 ABs. There's not like one kind of fruit that you can make it and smush it. It probably tastes good, but it can't be an apple banana, right? So they taught you about the concept of like terms, right? And they said if that A and that B are not identical, you can't add that 4 and that 7. So you know what 4A plus 7B is? It's 4A plus 7B, right? That's what it is. Okay? Same rule kind of applies except with exponents now. I cannot add that 3 and that 7 because the bases are not the same. So the first thing I want you to write is the bases must be the same in order for you to add the exponents. If they're not, don't add them, because you can't. All right? So if I have x to the 5th times x, just x, I'm going to kind of go over common errors with you. People go to add the exponents. They don't see an exponent here, and they think the answer is x to the 5th, and that's not right. It's x to the what? Yes, because here's the thing with this. I know you don't see it, but aren't you still looking at 1x? There is an x there. The only reason they didn't put an exponent is because there's only one. The reason they put a 5 there is because they want you to know that there's 5 x's. That is written out in standard form, right? So you need to know that you need to take that 5 and add that other one that you don't really see but you know is there for a final answer of x to the 6th. Okay? I cannot tell you in how many years I've been doing this, people forget to add that. So when you don't see an exponent, please know that there really is a 1 there. Kind of like this. If I asked you to add 5a plus a, you never told me that was 5a, did you? You told me it was what? 6a, because you knew there was a 1 there. So same deal. So here's what I want you to do. If you have a different color, you don't need to make a big deal of it. That's really what you see when you see an a, isn't it? You see a 1a to the 1st. That's really what that means, okay? So, are we kind of good with that? So, what would y times y equal? Careful. Y to the 2nd. Because you have 1 plus 1, and that's a 2. What would y plus y equal? 2y. Because you have 1 plus 1, which is 2. Okay, we're not doing this today, or in this unit even. We're really focusing on this, but that little tidbit of information right there is pretty helpful. So y times y is y squared, but y plus y means I have 2 y's. Think about it. You just have 2, okay? All right. This next thing I'm going to show you is, I think, kind of where people started to confuse themselves, so just be very careful with this. I do have to show you this, though. So, remember what I said about this. Like, if I have a y to the 5th times a y to the 4th, you keep what the base is, right? You kept the y, and you added the exponents. So you keep the base. Every single time the bases are the same, you keep the base, and you add the exponents, right? So, watch. What if I had 4 to the 3rd times 4 to the 7th? What is the exponent here? 3. What is the base? 4. Exponent 7, base 4. What do? Keep the base and add the exponents. I know you are so tempted to multiply that 4 times that 4 and put 16, right? Okay? Like, that is your instinct. You're like, 4 times 4 is 16. Woohoo! No, it's not the same answer. If I were to take 4 to the 3rd and find that answer separately, and take 4 to the 7th and find that answer separately, and multiply those together, it's not going to be the same as 16 to the 10th. It would be the same as 4 to the 10th. We're not going to do it because the calculator is going to be too big to hold it. But okay, it's a 4 with 10 zeros. So, do you understand what I mean by that? So now watch. Really quickly, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to sneak like an A in there. So instead of 4 to the 3rd, I'm going to make it 4a to the 3rd. I'm just making a whole new problem. Instead of 4 to the 7th, I'm going to make it 4a to the 7th. Okay? Because you're kind of like, all right, I know I just titled this like products. We haven't even multiplied anything yet. So, here's where we're getting to. What are the bases now for these exponents? Okay, now I guess we do need to clarify this. The base is only the one number that's directly, I guess you could say, below it. 4a is not the base. A is the base. 4 is the coefficient. So 4 is not the base. A is the base. Each exponent can only have one base. Now watch for a second. Now what's the base? What am I raising to the third power? The whole 4a. This means 4a times 4a times 4a. This does not. This means 4 times a times a times a. And this means 4 times a times a times a times a 7 times. Got it? So now, I know it's going to be a to the 10th, but what about this 4 and this 4? What should I do with them? Now can I multiply them? Yes. So that answer is 16a to the 10th, but that answer is 4 to the 10th. All right? I'm going to do another one so you can kind of see that. What if I asked you to multiply 5x to the third times 5x, just like that, versus just 5 to the third times 5. Do you see what I did? I just kind of took that little x out there. And here's what's so crazy. The worksheet I give you isn't going to give you any like this. I probably should have put some of those on there. But so it's like I have to teach you this because you'll see them at some point. But then people keep thinking, oh, I don't multiply it. So what's the base to this 3? X. What is the base to that 1? X. So I keep the base and add the exponents. And what should I do with the coefficients? Multiply them. Okay, so do you understand why I multiplied them there? Because the bases were there. 5 is not the base. Here, what's the base? 5. So don't I keep the base and add the exponents? Okay, that's all the time I want to spend on that. Because we need to go a little bit more with this. Okay, so now let's get into this then. What would 5a to the second times 3a to the fifth equal? Like, it's really, really easy. If they're coefficients, multiply them. So 5 times 3 is 15. And then what is 2 plus 5? That's it. Is that what you, yes. That's, how were they? I have no idea, Austin. I said the same thing. Like, I can't really make this any easier. Negative 7x to the fourth times 2x. If you see a coefficient, multiply them. If you see a big number, negative 7, positive 2, multiply them. 4 plus 1, 5. Done. Like, really. That's it. Okay? I mean, I got to add a couple more steps to it. So, let's talk about this. So, are you okay with that so far? So, what if I said x to the fourth, y to the third, z to the fifth, times, and you're going to be like, it's so easy, times x to the third, z to the fifth. Okay. You are then just thinking about the whole like term things. You can only add the exponents of the x's with the x's, the y's with the y's, and the z's with the z's. So I don't really think these lines are necessary, but you're kind of doing like 3 mini problems here, aren't you? So, and the other thing I want you to keep in mind is I want you to put your answers in alphabetical order. So, first let's do our x's. If I wrote all this out, I would write x, 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 y, 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 z, 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 right? I have a total of how many x's? 7. I have a total of how many y's? 3. And a total of how many z's? 10. That's done. That's it. Like, seriously, if you can add, you can do this today. But you have to know to add them and not to multiply them. But watch. What if I were to make this a 4 and a 7? The coefficient of all of this. Now, here's what's really important, guys. This 7 does not belong to the x's just because it's in front of it. It doesn't belong to the y's or to these. It's a total separate entity. It is a coefficient. You could take that coefficient away and multiply with the other coefficient. What would your answer be? That's it. That is it. Okay? Nothing confusing about it, is there? All right. So now that you are good with that, let's keep going a little bit more. All right? So, if I were to take, let's say, negative 5r squared p to the 7th times negative r to the 6th p. Because they're going to start to get a little increasingly. So now I see a negative 5, but I don't see another coefficient. And what did we say back in our notes when we don't really see a coefficient? It's really a. But because there's a negative there, that means that must be a negative 1. So what is a negative 5 times a negative 1? 5. Right? It's positive 5. Okay? Now add your r's. 2 here plus 6 here means 8. 7 here plus, don't forget that 1, is 8. That's it. Okay? Let's do a couple more because there are going to be a couple. Let's do this one. Negative x y to the 4th a, this will be tricky, times x a y to the 5th. Okay. Because sometimes they're not going to be like a nice, neat order for you. Like, I know the x's are okay, but then comes the y, and then the a, and then the a, and then the y. Here's what is going to be okay. Here's your order every single time. Coefficient first, then alphabetical order after that, regardless of what order they give it to you in. So, I don't really see a coefficient. I see a negative 1 times a positive 1, which is a negative 1, but you don't really need to write that, right? We can go ahead and do that just so you kind of know that that's a negative 1. My x's are 1 plus 1, which is 2. Okay? So, I guess watch this for a second. Y, because we're going to fix our answer in a minute. You have 4 here and 5 here for a total of 9. And 1 here plus 1 here for a total of 2. That's kind of like not the way you're going to see answers. You want to know the best way to write that? The first thing is you're not going to write the negative 1. The a is going to be in first because it's alphabetical. Then the x, then the y. So, will I mark you wrong for that? No. Because technically it's still the same answer. This is kind of like a preference. So, do you see how these answers mean the same thing? That negative 1 is still there, you just didn't write it. And the a is just kind of moved around, yes. Because the coefficient is separate from any, remember the coefficient does not belong to any of and this is, I'm really glad you asked that because I'm kind of starting to see what first hour was confused about. They kind of felt like because the 5 was in front of the r that it belonged to the r. The 5, the coefficient is a free agent. It is not tied to any of the variables. I could write this answer 5 p to the 8th r to the 8th if I wanted to. Doesn't mean that now the 5 belongs to the p. The 5 is a free agent. It is a loner. Doesn't want to be with any of the variables. So that's why I can kind of move these around, right? Does that help now? Kind of that the 5 doesn't belong to anything just because it's what's first. Okay? Okay, so are we okay with that? All right, so now let's talk about this. What about negative 4a to the 2nd times 2a times 5a to the 3rd? So here's what I said. You see coefficients? Multiply them all. Negative 2 times 4, or negative 4 times 2 is negative 8 times 5 is negative 40. And then do the A's. 2, 3, plus 3, 6. Think you got it? Okay. How about, I'm trying to look at the ones that were the most confusing. Negative 7, x to the third, a to the fifth, times negative 7, a to the first, x. Okay. Do you see coefficients? Yes. Well, first things first. Let's figure out if those 7s are bases or coefficients. That 3 has a base of x, not a 7. That 5 has a base of a. This 1, the base is the a, and this one is x. So what's negative 7? Do I multiply them now? Yes, because they're coefficients. Negative 7 times negative 7 is positive 49. And I know x was first, but can I just put it in alphabetical order as I do it? Do I have to do it this way and then rewrite it? No. Like, that's such a wasted step. Just do the a's first. Even though x is first here, 5 plus 1 is 6, and 1 plus 3 is 4. Do you think you got it? Okay. So let's look at this little rule right here. Here is your 4-step, surefire, follow these directions and you will be just fine summary. If there are coefficients, you multiply them. Then, if there are like bases, you keep the bases. And if there's a base, then there's going to be an exponent for sure. Add the exponents. Put the variables in alphabetical order. Okay? That is just a preference. There's one on the answer key that it's not in alphabetical order. It's not going to be wrong. It's just the way that they happen to do that and to write that. All right. If you know those 4 things, you should be able to kind of fly through. You got 20 of these. There's not even a back to it. They are literally just starting you off. So, like, for some reason, a lot of people are confused on number 2. Take a look at number 2. What's the coefficient? What am I multiplying that 10 by? Negative 1, right? So what's 10 times negative 1? Negative 10. What would my exponent be? K to the 5th, because 4 plus 1. Okay? Are you good with this? Okay. It's not bad, huh?